Everyone's saying 2024 is a filler year. GTA is coming out in 2025. The McDonald's snack wrap is coming out. So hopefully in 2024, we're going to get some good new music and we don't have to wait a filler year. Well, looks like 2024 was not a filler year for music. This year of music was absolutely insane. What's going on, everyone? It's your boy TOBBQ here with another year in review. I did a few year in review videos last year. This year, I'm only going to be able to make one, just sticking with the theme of inconsistency for 2024. Not inconsistent in music, just inconsistent in posting. But no, seriously, there was so much music to react to, and God knows how many recordings I've made. But I would say that I've enjoyed music a lot more this year because I haven't always prioritized like posting something or trying to get my reaction out there. Last year I had so much fun, but this year I wanted to make sure that I'm still enjoying music and not like stressing about it. So I appreciate you bearing with me. I definitely was able to listen to more albums this year and discover way more artists than last year. So I definitely think that's a pro of taking a step back. But go for 2025. We'll try to maintain like a little bit more balance. This year has just been absolutely insane for me. Just life, work, so much. Anyway, because I've been able to listen to so much this year, I'm gonna be able to provide you with a top 10 albums instead of a top 5. We also have honorable mentions again, and I actually have 10 honorable mentions. Don't worry, I'll breeze through them. It was really hard to like narrow down my top 10 and to think about the entire year of music because, you know, recency bias is always a thing. There's some things here that might not shock you if you've been paying attention to what I've posted this year, but there are a few things too that I haven't posted yet or haven't even filmed a reaction to that I'd love to share because I think that gives you an even deeper look into the things that I like to listen to or the things that I discover. Let's just jump right into honorable mentions. Trust me, it's worth it. Stay for the ride here. Also, I said this last year. I'm going to say it again. These are just like my favorite albums, not what I objectively think is the best or what is critically acclaimed, if you will. It's just simply what do I like, what do I love, and what brings me the most joy, what has impacted me most throughout the past year. Okay, so for our first honorable mention, we're going to play off of my #1 album last year, Jaguar 2, and we have Jaguar 2 Deluxe. The reason why this is an honorable mention is because it's not technically a new album, but it's a whole ass album added on top of the original album. Normally when you get a deluxe, it's like a few extra songs, but this time it was a whole, disc 2. I think if it had dropped earlier, it would have had a bigger impact on me just because I was really in the Victoria vibes and she won a Grammy. I think that would have been a great time, but I also think her winning the Grammy might have inspired the creation of the second part. At the end, she has like this whole list of thank yous and people who sent her messages. So I think really it was more about everything that's happened in the last year. Still, the music itself would have stuck with me a little bit more if it was dropped earlier. I listened to it once and then it sort of fell off, but that's probably just because I didn't edit the video on time. Anyway, favorite tracks off of that, we have SOS, Sex on Sight with Usher. Fantastic.
Wonder which one of my lips gonna be your first kiss. Doesn't matter cause they both gonna fit you perfect. I'm ready, so don't make me have to do this on my own.
I don't remember that line. Everyone needs someone. That has that old flair again that I love.
Everybody needs someone to give.
Oh my God, she's doing it again. And then of course the opening track, Dick at Night, which is just hilarious and just so her. I love this woman. Speaking of dick, that brings us to our second honorable mention, Peanut, the Dave soundtrack by Lil Dicky. Now, I'm not crazy into all of the songs or even like the album to like listen to casually. The reason why it's an honorable mention is just because I love the show Dave. I talked about this last year with The Weeknd putting out music for The Idol. That was like moving simultaneously with the show. But in this case, it was cool to see Lil Dicky like have his own show where he creates original songs and in the show promoting or creating this album called Peanut, and then it ends up being in the real world. I just thought it was like kind of meta, and I really like that. Songs that I enjoy from the album, Mr. McAdams, that's a good one. Ali's song that just hits you right in the feels. Lil Dicky, despite him being super funny, he really knows how to like strike a chord. I think that's incredible. You wouldn't assume that from him. You got Ha Ha Ha. The music video is insane for that. Harrison Ave, I Love Myself, I Met a Girl. Like again, just some of these things that are striking. He's a really good storyteller. I think that's really what it is. But again, really cool to see the soundtrack kind of emanate from the show. Speaking of soundtracks, we have our honorable mention number 3, Bando Stone and the New World by Childish Gambino. Again, we love a good soundtrack. What's different about this one is that the soundtrack was created before the movie was even released. I don't even know when it's coming out. I really want to see it. Donald, let's get on that, man. Like, when's this happening? So yeah, it was just kind of the reverse of the Lil Dicky thing. But what I thought was fascinating about this soundtrack is that it was super dynamic. As we know, I'm a big fan of a dynamic album, but Gambino just moves through so many different genres, things that you wouldn't expect him to, but then you're listening and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it kind of works for him. But with all that said, I have no idea how that's going to like fit into a film because there are so many different vibes. He'll make it work. Donald Glover makes it work. I just watched Atlanta for the first time. Phenomenal show. I trust that man's vision 1000%. He'll do it justice. Favorite tracks off of that: In the Night with Georgia Smith and Amare, our girl. She was a fave last year. But No Excuses. That is the best song off that album. For me personally, it just carries such a groove to it, and it's kind of like an extended song. It just kind of runs off into like this jam session and then comes back around, and I'm all for that. That song is truly beautiful. Potentially a contender for Song of the Year for me. Speaking of jam sessions though, we have our next honorable mention, Why Lord by No Worries. For those who know, this is the second time that Producer Knowledge and Anderson .Paak have collaborated on something. Their original album, Yes Lord, was so good. I absolutely loved it. And I had no idea that this album was coming, just kind of like popped up for me at least. And I was super excited. Anderson has, you know, always had that je ne sais quoi. His trajectory has just gone upwards in recent years because he's so creative, so talented. But then you have an awesome producer like Knowledge too. It's just like a lethal combination. Not to mention, there are some legendary features on this album. Dave Chappelle on the opener, Thundercat, Charlie Wilson, Snoop Dogg, and her. I mean, that's a stacked lineup if you ask me. There's other features too of artists that I don't know, but those 5 alone, that's saying something. The nature of that album is collaborative, and so pulling in other people just adds to that collaboration. Absolutely love it. The first time I listened to this was in the car, and I had a long drive, and I'm like, let me just go for it. These guys are probably just going to be jamming out and just traversing through different sounds and genres, and it's going to blend and it's going to be pretty seamless. And it was kind of exactly that. And so when listening to it on repeat, I just went front to back. I had some songs that I liked, but nothing that stood out and listened to in isolation. Like, all of it was just a complete run through. Some standouts for me: Looking, Daydreaming, I know that was a big one, and Distant Space. I thought all 3 of those were really cool. But speaking of Anderson .Paak, we have our next honorable mention, 10 Days by Fred again. The reason why it connects to Anderson .Paak is because there's a song called Places to Be featuring Anderson .Paak and Chica, and that was also a really, really cool song. Absolutely loved it. Another track called Glow. It's like 7.5 minutes. It just ebbs and flows. It's an absolute ride. Definitely take a look. But I would recommend the album as a whole because conceptually it's just very cool, and that's why it's an honorable mention, because it's called 10 Days and like it's broken out into 10 days. Each song is divided by like a day. I just thought that was unique. Like, I'd never come across something like that, and I feel like that's just worth mentioning. Sounds and new genres and all that is cool when it comes to music, when people can really invent. But I also love when artists get creative with their structures or their formats of how they're delivering their albums, or not only thinking about creating new music, but also how to package it. Also really cool to just dive into Fred again's music, because I've heard stuff that he's produced, but never one of his solo projects. Speaking of production, our next honorable mention is Charm by Clairo. The production on that album was phenomenal. Some of you might be jaded that I didn't include this in my top 10. I know a lot of people think it's album of the year. The reason why it's just an honorable mention for me is because I wouldn't say I was in love with every song, but it was just beautiful front to back. I can appreciate the production fully. Most of it's a little on the slower side, so it's hard to kind of get behind that, but I'm in love with the retro vibes. I haven't listened to other Clairo projects. I've heard her featured on some things that are a little bit more modern, so it was cool to see her jump back through time a little bit. I will say though, there are 2 songs on that album that are contenders for Song of the Year for me. Sexy to Someone, that was on repeat so much for me in like the earlier part of this year. And then when the album dropped, Add Up My Love. That song is fantastic. Maybe a little bit of 60s, maybe a little bit of 70s. Like, I don't really know, but it was just executed so well, and I loved both of those songs. Now, speaking of the 60s and the 70s and that whole era, my next honorable mention is The Thing Is by The Thing. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a shameless plug. It turns out that my friend from high school is in the band. For those who don't know, a few of you have commented, I don't have Instagram. So I genuinely have no idea what's going on in the lives of friends from high school or even friends from college. Like, I'm so far removed. So it made it all that much more special that I was just listening to music that, you know, DJ X on Spotify recommended. And yeah, I'm like, this band's cool. I click on them. I see my friend. I'm like, what? What's going on here? He's the drummer and he's been drumming for years. He's great. Sure enough, I see that they're going on tour. And as I, you know, was traveling to Japan and the Philippines, I thought to myself, you know what, let me take a connection through San Francisco because they'll be in that area. And I ended up like surprising my friend at the show, which was like so much fun. We hadn't talked in years. It was like really cool. And then went to see him again closer to my hometown. So that was just like an awesome experience. And as far as the album goes, it's great. I don't really know how to describe the rock. It's definitely like indie rock with a little bit of classic rock, with a little bit of like garage rock. Like, it's something. But I'll tell you what, the whole band, they're all great dudes and they all have like that aura about them from that decade, that period. So if you're looking for more of that like older vintage rock sound, I would definitely recommend checking them out because they're awesome. And they're, again, just really, really talented. Some standout tracks for me, The Thing Is, which is the titular track. Of course, we love those. Neptune is a cool one. Northrop 8, I also like that one. And In a Garden as well. There's just a whole range of vibes, but go give them a listen. They're a good time. Now, as we kind of move from the 60s and 70s to the 80s, we have our next honorable mention, Found Heaven by Conan Gray. I've been a casual Conan fan for a little bit. I was definitely more in tune with his Kid Crow days. Haven't followed him religiously since, but I was so pleasantly surprised with this album. Maybe it was more drastic because I missed the middle album between his first and this one, but just the amount of growth that I could feel in his style, in his tone, everything felt more mature. He completely embraced the whole new wave sound, which I've heard is like integral to the gay man's experience in like the 80s and 90s. So to see him fully embrace that was really cool. I'm sure that was special for his own growth in his identity. I don't know, it just felt very personal in that sense. And as far as like just the new wave in general, it was fun to dance to. It had like a really good like upbeat vibe. He's awesome vocally. He has this really awesome energy about him. And I kind of felt proud listening to it because it was like, wow, he's like really coming to his own, you know? But then there was like one weird moment in the album too, where he just had the song that sounded like a straight Beatles song. So he like jumped back a decade or two earlier and then just went right back into the new wave, you know, 80s vibe. Now, I'm going to be a little bit of a basic bitch for this one, but my favorites of the album were the singles, which is a rare case that never happens, but Never Ending Story and Winner, they are the singles for a reason and they stand out. They're awesome. Anyway, we've been talking about decades a lot, and that brings us into our next honorable mention, The Great Impersonator by Halsey. Now, I want to make this very clear. I'm not a fan of Halsey. Not personally, I don't even know her, but more so like just her music. I've never really been drawn to her voice. It's never really hit me like, you know, The Weeknd's voice has. But conceptually, again, I thought this album was so cool. The only reason I listened to it was because of the promotion and like the marketing of it. I must have seen this on YouTube. I'm not really sure, but in the days leading up to the album, she was apparently posting on Instagram all of these influences, and she would take like famous photos of them and recreate them with her face. And each person was like connected to a song on the album. So in essence, her entire album is dynamic. Each song is a reflection of another artist. And you know, that might rub people the wrong way and might not think that it's like original. But you know, I really like how overt that is, because there's so many artists that are kind of copying each other or taking older sounds or recycling things, and there isn't really often like that credit. So I think it's really brave of her to be like, hey, I'm making an album, these are all the people that have influenced me, and I'm essentially going to write kind of a love letter for each of them. Like, thank you so much for inspiring me. You ask some people, they might hate that idea. For me, I just thought it was cool. Again, the album itself, I wasn't obsessed with it. Her voice doesn't really like strike a chord with me. Truly, there's only really one song that I liked, and it was Panic Attack. And immediately I knew she was going for like a Fleetwood Mac, like Stevie Nicks vibe. So again, just a shout out for the concept. Really cool to just kind of go through like her journey of falling in love with music. Speaking of journeys, we have our last honorable mention, Journey by Jordan Ward and Junie. Now, I briefly talked about Jordan Ward last year. I heard a few songs of his, then I listened to his album. I really felt like he had something unique going on. But like a friend kind of put it, he was still figuring out his sound. And I don't know, I felt like this album, or more so this EP, and that's another reason why it's an honorable mention, showed him coming into his sound a little bit more. I have no idea who Junie is. He's the person rapping in some of the tracks. I don't know if he's helping produce or whatnot. That was my first intro to him, but they were just a killer combo. They complemented each other really, really well. The EP is only 12 minutes long. You know, it's a quick listen, but I kind of love it for that reason. You just get like a little mini short story. I feel like the art of the EP should remain. I hope that never dies. For a lot of up and coming artists, like that will always be the case, you know, putting out like a few tracks, but it's not just songs. It's kind of concept too. Like the beginning starts with someone turning on their car, and I think they turn on the radio, and that radio element kind of comes through the rest of the tracks in between. It's not just music, it's a story. There's not many songs to pick from, and I'm gonna have to have another mainstream moment here, but my two favorite tracks were the two most popular ones. That's Jealousy and Burning Rubber. I'd say I probably prefer Burning Rubber a little bit more, also because I heard that as a single before I listened to the EP, but it also kind of just has this kind of vibe that Jordan Ward creates with some of his songs. But yeah, definitely worth mentioning because it's just a good vibe. I'm really, really excited to see what Jordan Ward keeps doing. Maybe I'll keep an eye on Junie too, but we've definitely been a Jordan supporter since last year, and he's still cooking. We love it. All right. We got all those honorable mentions out of the way. I hope you appreciated the segues. Let's get into my top 10 of 2024. Starting with number 10, we have Orquídeas by Caliuchis. You won't be surprised when I use the word dynamic. And the reason why I say dynamic is because it was just such an awesome range of Latin sounds, plus a little bit of her R&B sauce that she just like always has. But I feel like it's very sentimental for that reason. She's able to like put all of herself, all of her Colombian energy into that album. Maybe it was like a reggaeton song or more traditional songs where you're dancing like salsa or cumbia or merengue, whatever, like the, you know, big dances in Colombia. I just loved how it was kind of all over the place in that sense, like still cohesive. Now, I did intend on making a video for that, and I filmed for 3 hours because I was translating all the Spanish for everyone, only to realize that I had like set my mic volume like way higher than the music. And so it would have been hours of like ducking my sound, guys, and I'm sorry, I don't have the time for that. Just know I enjoyed it, and maybe you'll see a few clips in the next few seconds because I'll just mention my favorite songs real quick. We have Igual que un ángel with Peso Pluma. Thought that one was a lot of fun. Pensamientos intrusivos, intrusive thoughts. That just struck a little bit of a chord. But you also have Muñequita, which was like the single, and that shit will just make you go crazy. That's being played at like every block party for like the next 10 years. It has to be. There's no way. And then you have like Dame Beso / Muévete, which is the finale. And again, that dips into more of like the traditional, I guess, Latin or even Colombian music. And just to see her like totally show that off, show that side of her, absolutely electric. Now, my reasons for number 10 could be kind of connected a little bit to my reasons for number 9, which is God Said No by Omar Apollo. Again, dynamic is just always the theme of my preference. Similar to Orquídeas, there was the Latin sound, and he had a few songs where he really fully embraced that. And he also has like some of those R&B vibes, but he's also a gay icon. So now you have him throwing in some of those influences as well. Again, the new wave vibes, like those 80s and 90s mysterious like synthy vibes. I just never expected him to go into that. He's always shown off his Latin flair, some like rock vibes, R&B vibes, but the new wave vibe felt, well, kind of new for him. And after seeing him in concert, I mean, I was just so impressed. It felt like he was like a one-man boy band. He was really channeling that energy the whole time. And that was something that I never anticipated. I would have just expected him to get up there and sing and maybe play a little bit of guitar, but he was dancing, he was doing choreo. And anytime you go see someone perform live, it just enhances whatever their recent album is. It very much happened for me. I was so awestruck by his talent and his high notes, whew, they were like whines, like just like things like that. And I was just like, all right, he's doing him. I love it. But just to talk about my favorite tracks, these again are probably some of the more popular ones. Dispose of Me, I thought that was an amazing single. Give me that falsetto. We got too much history. Yeah, that blank space is just so... Oh, love the lyrics so much to that. Less of You, which again has like some of that new wavy vibes, you know, like the transient techno, whatever. And then Done With You, which is another contender for Song of the Year. I'm so done with you, done with you, done with you, done with you, done. I'm done with you, done with you, done with you, done with you, done. That song is infectious. It's just so much fun. It's groovy. He's talking his shit. Like, I love it. It's a great time.
Bro, you got better bitches.
Oh.
I'm so done with you, done with you, done with you, done with you, done.
Moving into number 8, we have the self-titled album Dayglow. Now, this is another album you might have seen on the channel, and it was one that I really enjoyed. I've been a Dayglow fan very casually like the last few years. I can't remember if I listened to an album prior to this one, but I definitely heard songs. So it was cool to consciously like jump into an album here. One of the things that has always stood out about Sloan is that he just does it all himself. He produces it, he sings, he records the instruments, like everything going on. And I will always have an affinity for artists that are doing that. Singular visions are so cool. And I remember hearing that was his intention with this latest album. He had kind of strayed off into like a lot of synth heavy things, and he just wanted to pare it back to like the stuff he had been doing when he was like 19, creating his first album. And you can just really feel that as you listen to the project. But the number one thing that's worth mentioning in this album is just like the joy that Sloan puts into his songs. Not every lyric for every song is like happy, but the net result of listening to his album is feeling joy, or feeling warm at least, or comforted. I think that's so impressive. After listening to that, I went back into all his other albums, and like that's still the same vibe in just different formats and different fonts, if you will. You would think I'd like get tired of that, but no, he just has this way to like communicate and send joy to you regardless of the song that he sings. And I just think that's magical, man. Like you got to have that joy and that love within you to give that to other people. I had a lot of fun listening to that and seeing him in concert twice, actually. Saw him in my hometown, and then I was traveling to St. Louis for a wedding and saw him again. He was that good. Loved it. Favorite tracks off of that album, we have Every Little Thing I Say I Do. That was the single for a reason. It was a lot of fun. Fuck it up. Old Friend, New Face.
If you don't wanna believe it, that doesn't mean it won't be straight. All with the new face.
Love the chorus on that. And then Silver Lining. That one I just like bobbed my head to seamlessly. Just again, feel good.
Dogmatical, yet so casually cool.
Yeah, that's like the whole vibe of this album.
I can't help myself sometimes.
Love Dayglow. All right, now moving on to number 7. This will be an album you've likely never listened to from an artist that you may have never even heard of. The album is called Accelerator by an artist named Greek. Drop a comment if you've listened to this or you know this guy, because I just discovered him like a few months ago and his shit is fire. The best way I could describe it is like Daniel Caesar adjacent, maybe. He has like that silkiness in his voice like Daniel Caesar, and there are like some vocal resemblances, and there are even some songs that hit that Daniel Caesar like R&B vibe. But then he also kind of like just kicks it into some other genres or some other vibes that I'm like, well, but this isn't Daniel Caesar, you know, this isn't like a replica. This is unique, you know, this is something I've never heard of. And I really wish that I could offer more context onto like what this sounds like, but I feel like it's just something you should just go experience on your own. I want to see this guy though so bad. I think I missed the first part of his tour. I hope he comes back around, you know, in the second half. But again, going back to like the singular vibes, I think he made the entire album by himself. as well. I really hope he gets to do big things. Anyway, I think it's worth a listen. As you go through the songs, it's kind of dynamic, but you know, there was one 3-song stretch that I enjoyed a lot. Dance, There For You, and then Virginia Creeper, which was actually the single that I heard that pulled me into the album. Those 3 songs back to back to back were really cool. But Virginia Creeper, it's the single for a reason. Fantastic song. I really want to go see that guy in person because he seems really talented. Stay tuned for that. But speaking of artists I have seen in person, we'll move to album number 6, which is No Place Like Home by Vacations. I saw these guys earlier this year, maybe in the springtime, summertime. You know, it's just this band from Australia. They're just really cool dudes. They're that type of like indie rock that sounds so familiar, but also so unique at the same time. They really have their own seasoning that they put onto their tracks. But again, for me, when it comes to indie rock, there's just something so familiar about it that it's so easy for me to love. The barrier of entry is super low. They had dropped an album like way early in the year. I ended up like discovering it months later. I think Next Exit was the single that I heard that pulled me in. Not my favorite song on the album. I'd say my favorites, you have No Place Like Home, titular track. The chorus on that is beautiful, and actually live too was just absolutely amazing. We also have Midwest. I think that's just a fun one. And we also have Close Quarters. I love the guitar. And I don't know if it's the bass, but I just remember the guitar being really awesome. Vacations, go check them out. All right, switching gears totally. Number 5, we have an R&B banger, Mutt by Leon Thomas. I just want to make one thing clear. I've recorded my reaction to this. I will edit it eventually.
Are you sure about that?
But I just want to say Leon Thomas, he's him. Okay, the music he dropped like years ago, I was absolutely in love with. He dropped an album last year, Electric Dusk, but he's been producing for so many people over the years, and I just think that's so awesome. Take Ariana Grande, who became the star of Victorious and then like did her own thing. You know, he's also a star in his own way. He was quite literally the producer on the show, playing the piano for everyone and writing the songs, and then he ended up doing that in real life. And I just think that's so cool to see him continually make amazing music. He's not only singing and performing and doing probably most of the instruments, but he's doing the production. Again, it shouldn't come as a surprise that I love solo creators like this. But yeah, in that album, you have a range of feelings. It's still all under the umbrella of R&B, but you know, you got like sad vibes, you got like talk your shit vibes. It's just a phenomenal album. The single Mutt, I had heard like weeks prior, and I was so excited for the rest of the album because that song is fantastic and is a contender for Song of the Year.
So you can break my heart if you want to. She said, take your time, what's the rush? Take your time, what's the rush? I said, baby, I'm a dog.
Like that, trying to light me down, I'm just not peeping that. These goofy groupie hoes is the reason that I'm still screaming where my dog's at.
Definitely one of my favorites. The regular version or the Freddie Gibbs version, they're both great. But other tracks that I really liked, How Fast, the intro, I thought was awesome. I love a good intro. Yes, it is. That's like a more typical R&B one too. And then I Do, which is just a beautiful song.
God really sent you my way, yeah. And if the best ever as I do, I do. Cause after all the things I've been through, I can ask for much more than true.
Yeah, there's a lot of soul to that one. All right, moving on to number 4. We have potentially the album of the summer. This one won't be as much of a surprise because you might have been here for it. Radical Optimism by Dua Lipa. I had a lot of fun listening to this one. It was on repeat a lot. The pop girlies were kind of taking over the summer, or taking over the year as a whole, but for me, I think the Dua album stood out the most. Initially, I was enjoying the vibes, but like thanks to some of you guys who like commented about the lyrics, there were some like deeper themes and the whole like overarching theme too about growth through like love and relationships that made me appreciate it even more. And I totally didn't highlight this much in the video, but the fact that it's produced by Kevin Parker from Tame Impala was just probably why it resonated so much. Obviously Dua's great and like she's got great energy, she really puts herself out there, but that's half the battle sometimes. For me, you know, I'm always gonna appreciate production, and so I really love seeing that collaboration. And at the end of the day, just brought me a lot of joy. I was really having the time of my life listening to that album. Songs to note: What You Doing? That's my favorite song on the album.
What you doing to me, baby? I'm scared to death that you might be the one
everyone has their favorites, but I feel like that just didn't get as much love as it should have. Same with Anything for Love. I know that felt like an incomplete song to some people, but I really just love the switch up from just piano to like this groovy little ditty bop.
Remember when we used to do anything for love?
The feeling, the emotion of that song just like accelerated and then just like cut off right at the end, which is frustrating a little bit, but like fun at the same time.
I wanna love that's strong, keeping me when it hurts. We don't even think to cut it off. Remember when we used to do anything for love?
Maria too, I love that song as well. I love like the little Spanish Moroccan flair that's going on there.
I look in his eyes and I see her time after time. Even I'm here in his eyes.
That felt like kind of out of her normal realm, and I love when artists just step outside of what they normally do. And then we'll just throw Houdini in there. I mean, that was one of my favorite songs last year, and it's technically like not a song from this year, but as we know, that song's a banger. And you know, it gave you this.
I come and I go. Tell me all the ways you need me. I'm not here for long. Catch me or I go Houdini.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to album number 3, which I would also consider to be a summary album for me, one that I was listening to driving with the windows down, is Lone Star by Dreamer Boy. This one was recommended to me. I had no idea who Dreamer Boy was, and the title Lone Star kind of turned me off a little bit because Texas is the Lone Star state. So I'm thinking it's going to be like all country, and I'm just like, meh, not really into that. But holy shit, man. This album is amazing. There's some days where I wonder, like, should it be my #1 album of the year? Because I listened to it so much. More than anything, maybe. At least anything new this year. But again, very dynamic. Enjoyed how there were just a range of sound. There was like a Billy Joel vibe. There were Coin vibes. That was initially why it got recommended to me. There was some like Fleetwood Mackie vibes. I've since learned that the genre is called indie twang, and I'm into it. If that's like country adjacent, then so be it. But I'm definitely a fan. The only thing, and maybe this is why it's number 3 for me, I had literally bought tickets to go see Dreamer Boy, and he canceled the show that I was gonna go to. So I'm a little salty about that. Like, what the hell, man? I just fell in love with your album and I'm about to go see it, and now you bailed out. It's all right. I'm over it. No, I'm not over it. Songs worth mentioning. Truly, I think they're all great, but my favorites would have to be Twin Flame featuring Goldie Botelier, also another candidate for Song of the Year. The chorus just it lifts you up. Then we have songs like Baby Blue and If You're Not in Love. Those two I feel like had similar energies. Really had a lot of fun with those. But then we also have a song like Mud, which is a little bit more personal, but oh my God, just visceral. I love it. Now, moving on to number 2, we have an album that I actually did get to see in person, and that's Algorithm by Lucky Day. This one's still being edited. I'm in deep. Anyway, I love this album so much. My love for Lucky Day's music has certainly just increased throughout the years. I think he's so talented. All of his albums are produced by our boy lmao, so you know that it's always going to be a great time. And this album was no exception to that. They're really like a lethal combo. Initially with this album, I was kind of thrown off. I was like, I don't know if I understand it fully. It's a little abstract. There were so many computery sounds and like weird robotic glitchy things going on in between what I would describe as like the true essence of rhythm and blues. R&B is a very vast genre, but I feel like Lucky and his music sit right at the heart of it. I just can't speak more highly about it. Still need to buy my mom the album. I've always said, if I buy my mom the album, that's how you know it's good. Just to shout out a few songs. The intro, Never Leaving You Lonely, powerhouse of a song. I didn't realize like the first minute of that song basically takes you through the whole album. There's snippets and things that you'll hear later on in songs, but you don't know what they are until you've listened to the album. So I thought that was really cool on a re-listen. But after that like mysterious intro, it just hard cuts into this sick track, man. Just go check it out.
I'll make sure that you're never alone again. A handful of it, just trying to bring it together.
I didn't even get into the rest. Then you have Hurricane as the next track, which again, contender for song of the year. It was my #1 listened to song this year.
Midnight, let it rain, baby, rain. Till we slide into the eye of a hurricane.
And then track 3, Soft.
I don't know the meaning, but I know what it could be. Like a whisper when I hear you talk to me. And it's cold out and it's hard to let go.
I love how dynamic the song is. Those 3 tracks in the beginning, insane opening to an album. Other favorite songs that I really enjoyed, titular track, Algorithm. I thought that was a really, really cool song. Breaking the Bank, which has like more of that groove, little funk vibe. Ooh, love it. And then lastly, Lemonade, which I just feel like has a really good message. It's like really heartfelt. Now, mind you, those are not all the tracks that I love. I gotta like pick favorites instead of listing them all, but this was the R&B album of the year for me. Now, moving on to album #1. If you've been following the channel for a long time, you'd know this has just been a love story in the making, but it is I'm Not Afraid of Music Anymore by Coin. Over a year ago, I fell in love with this band, and over the past year, I've been listening to all of their albums, spacing it out, taking my time, and each project I've just continued to enjoy, continued to love. It was just an awesome experience, similar like what I was saying about Omar, to be a fan when new music comes out and be a part of that excitement, be able to go to a concert and see them perform. I felt like the whole like past year was just culminating up into that point. And I think this is one of those things where music can touch you, but the type of music that touches you is completely like circumstantial. If I hadn't been listening to Coin for like the last year, and then I just listened to this album like, oh, let me get back into Coin, there's a good chance that it wouldn't have hit as hard, or it wouldn't have meant as much to me as it did. Yeah, man, I'm in love with their music. It's unfiltered joy, in my opinion. It's just so human. It's so authentic. And I'm really glad that I got to say that to them, you know, and share that with them. I got to meet some of the guys in the band, talked about it in my video. But as someone that sits here in front of you and always just says, stay real, stay you, it was just cool to connect more with the band whose like values are aligned with that idea of just like being genuine and authentic. At that point, it was just more than music for me. And like I said, I never want this to be a critical, objective thing. This is totally personal and subjective. And I'm just sharing not even just all my thoughts, but also my feelings that like the music evokes out of me. Being at that concert, man, knowing the new songs, knowing some of the old songs. I can't remember a time where I've been happier at a concert. Well, actually I can. It was seeing Bruno Mars and The Weeknd. But being there with that band and even the people that I met there, I really don't have words for it. I talked about this in my video. I just really loved how my experience being a Coin fan and the creation of this album were parallel, in the sense that they were both like very culminating things, because the album also felt like a culmination of all of their music that they've done in the past. It's beyond explanation. It just kind of syncs up. And for that reason, it just adds more meaning. But anyway, favorite songs after that, we have Olivia. It's just such a beautiful song.
It's Olivia, I know.
Oh,
If you want me to, I'll go.
the chord progression.
Olivia, it's you.
Yeah, man, that's a fire song. And then you have 222, which is also just another beautiful song.
Yeah, we got room to grow.
Oh, this one's a warm hug for me. And to your surprise, maybe, these are slower songs. These are not like up-tempo songs, which is usually my bread and butter. These are slower tracks, but they're emotional. And there's feeling there. And that's just Coin's business. They just keep it real. But if we're going to pick a more upbeat song, we have Take It or Leave It.
So much, I miss going a pretty boyfriend. Don't go breaking my heart. Just tear me apart. Yeah. Take it or leave it.
That was the really fun one for me. So there you have it, guys. Those are my top 10 albums of the year, plus a few honorable mentions. I just want to thank you again for, listening to music with me throughout the year. I know we haven't listened to much music together because I've been pretty shit at posting, but I'm always going to keep it real with you. I'm always going to be authentic. And there are days where I don't feel like recording. There are days where I don't want to have to react to something. And I just want to enjoy music for joy's sake. you know, or experience something on my own too. And I hope that doesn't offend you and that you understand that I want to maintain the sacredness of music being a personal thing. So I won't be offended if you lose interest, that's fine, but we're just vibing here. This entire year has been such a vibe. I'm very grateful for all the music that's been released. I'm grateful for all the discussions that we've been able to have about certain albums, especially for those who were able to share new artists or expose me to new genres or whatnot. Anything that you recommend, I do listen to it, even if like I don't react to it. So just know that means a lot. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed your holidays, and more importantly, I hope you had a great 2024. I'm sure it was filled with ups and downs. We all go through that, but if there were more downs than ups, then I hope maybe 2025 is more ups. I do think 2025 is the come up. It's promising with music, at least for me, because I know that The Weeknd is releasing his album and Bruno Mars might actually be dropping something too. And I will be here for both of those. I will promise you that right now. That is a promise I can keep. As far as the rest, we'll see. Music or beyond. Thank you again so much for supporting the channel. Music creates community, and I am very grateful for this community. This has been TOBBQ. Please, in 2025, stay real and stay you. Very dynamic. It's kind of dynamic. Again, dynamic, super dynamic.